Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start. I am Stephanie Herlick, and you are watching Tuesday Tea with AT. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm presenting with Vanessa Herndon.
Hi.
And go ahead, Vanessa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. My name is Vanessa Herndon, and I am the Low Vision Clinic Coordinator at California School for the Blind.
And again, I'm Stephanie Herlick, and I'm the Assessment Center Coordinator at California School for the Blind. And today, well, Vanessa and I are both part of the CSB outreach team. So today our Tuesday Tea topic is options for remote Braille instruction and how to encourage students to continue Braille reading. So we just want to remind everybody, we have a bit of a presentation, and but we're hoping we'll have time at the end for some participation, and we may even ask for a little bit of participation during, but so we do want to hear from you. And I'm going to go ahead and share the results of our first poll. So the question was, I'm going to actually, hopefully everybody had a chance to answer their questions. I'm going to end the polling and share the results. So the question was, what is taking up the greatest amount of time during your day? And the options were preparation, webinars, direct teaching, and tearing out your hair. So we had 40% of you said preparation was taking up the most time. Then the runner-up to that at 25% was direct teaching. And then webinars and tearing out your hair were tied at 17% of participants. So thanks so much, everybody, for doing that. We want to let you know that we are going to be sharing the PowerPoint with you afterwards. It takes a couple of days for us to get the recordings up and the PowerPoint shared, but we have a lot of links also in this PowerPoint. So we're going to share with you also a Google Doc where you can just scroll through the links. We thought that might be a little bit more accessible than having to launch the PowerPoint. So we're going to go ahead. Oh, we have one more before we launch into the meat of our presentation. We have one more poll for you. So Eureka is helping us out with moderating, and she's going to put up the second poll with the question being, what are you using to teach reinforced Braille learning remotely? So go ahead and take a moment to answer that, and that kind of leads us into our first topic. It's kind of
and
fun
also, just to let you guys know, there's 93 participants so far in this session, and my Zoom account only holds 100. So hopefully,
Wow.
yeah, I didn't expect this many people.
So 50 of you have, we're up to 55 people have answered. It's kind of fun to watch these numbers go up. I'll give you another minute, quick minute. Oh, wow. The numbers are rolling in fast. 66 out of 91 have answered, 72%.
We're also at 95 people.
All right.
I can also tell me when you want me to close the poll results, Stephanie. I can show it on the screen.
Oh, I can do it from here too.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead, just because we want to get moving. I'm going to go ahead and end the polling. I apologize if you didn't get your answer in there. But I'm ending it, and a quick recap is what are you using to teach reinforced Braille learning remotely? So 55%, so over half of you, this is really interesting, are using teacher-made materials. I guess not surprising right now considering our shelter in place. And then 22% of you said other. 13% are using Mangold, and 7% are using Patterns, and 1 person's using Bookshare. And at this point, no one is using Objective Ed. So we're going to talk a little bit more about options, and maybe you'll find something that can, pique your interest. Give it a try too. So we're going to move on to slide 2. All right. So we did ask you all questions. You had a chance actually to write a few questions when you registered for the webinar. And we received a lot of questions about options for Braille instruction. So certainly nothing is the same, I'm sure, as you've all learned, nothing is the same as teaching Braille in person. And but we still want to be teaching Braille. We want to be having our students practice. So I've listed here kind of our top options for Braille, and these are in no particular order. So I just wanted to run through those, and there are links, again, on the PowerPoint. If you're not familiar where to find these different programs, you can certainly click on the links. So the first one I have up is the Mangled Braille program. There's 3 units to that, units 1 and 2. Unit 1 is tracking. Unit 2 is learning the alphabet, and Unit 3 is UEB, learning the Braille code. So those definitely can be done remotely. In fact, I believe on the Exceptional Teaching website, you can even choose to purchase 2 teacher manuals. So I know some people have sent their teacher manuals home for parents so they can kind of help guide their students along while the teacher retains one of those manuals. So that would make it a little bit easier on that front. Patterns is another option. It's available from APH. Patterns is definitely more of a scripted instruction with a lot of materials, so I can see how it might be a little bit more difficult to do at home. However, there's a lot of great extension materials that go along with it, so it could be a good option. Objective Ed, I'm not sure, maybe Vanessa or even Eureka knows when that launched, but I did watch a webinar about Objective Ed, and they have these ongoing webinars because it's fairly new. It is computer and app based. So as a teacher, you're on your computer developing worksheets, and the student has their version using an iPad. Now, the one thing is you do have to get the Braille sheets to your students, so likely sending those through the mail. And there's no curriculum built in with it. It does require you to create your own curriculum. It's fairly new. It's really robust. It does take a fair amount of work on the teaching part. However, my feeling is once you've developed those worksheets, you can kind of retain them and then use them for multiple students if you happen to be in that situation. So I think there's a lot of work up front. It might pay off in the long run. So it's something to consider. And there is a application for it where you can send those lessons to Braille displays if your student does have a Braille display. What I would recommend is watching their webinar. So their webinars are daily, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 12 o'clock Pacific time, and Tuesday and Thursday, 3 o'clock Pacific time. And that's specifically for the Braille version of their program. There's another option for practice for Braille reading, or the UEB practice sentences. Those are available from Actual Tactuals, and those are just good to kind of keep skills up. And another one to kind of remediate some, DF confusions and HJ, and it really does target specific skills, is Beginning Braille. That's a program available again through Exceptional Teaching. So one thing I just wanted to say about teaching Braille remotely is, yes, it's going to be harder to monitor hand movements, scrubbing, finger placement, all those things that we usually want to keep a close eye on. So I know some teachers are using 2 cameras and strategically instructing students and families to help place those cameras during instruction. Another thought is to educate your families when possible. I know for sometimes that's just not reality, but when it is, really teaching families what to look out for. And maybe not everything, but you could think about, well, this week we're really going to focus on backtracking. So, you know, we know as teachers to keep our lessons really positive. So I think giving parents and families like one thing to look at so that students are hearing most of the positive, but are being, but parents do know what to look out for. So those are kind of my suggestions for this remote learning, but we don't want to stop the education because it's virtual, and we know it's just going to be harder to monitor those things. So moving on to slide 3. We had a lot of questions about what we can do for pre-Braille activities. And I actually think finding these pre-Braille activities is really fun. I've listed just a smidgen of what is possible, and I thought here people could maybe chime in on the chat, or if you start by chiming in on the chat, and maybe at the end, if we have extra time, we can talk about what your ideas are for pre-Braille activities. But my slide focuses on strengthening, fine motor, and tactile discrimination. So for strengthening, I really tried to think about, for the most part, what families might have at home. So for strengthening, clay or Play-Doh kind of consistencies, and you can do homemade Play-Doh, really helps with strengthening those little fingers, as well as cracking nuts, of course, for students that are not allergic. But taking the old-time nut cracker and placing it over that nut and cracking it, and then even having to sort out the shell versus the nut. I would recommend starting with a softer nut like peanuts, and maybe advancing to the harder nuts like almonds or walnuts. For fine motor activities, I saw this on Facebook actually, and then I went and found the picture on Pinterest, which I do want to put a plug in. There's some amazing ideas on Pinterest for these types of activities. But I have a picture there of a large egg beater, and it's filled with these like 1-inch colorful pom-poms. And so having students put their fingers in and pull out the pom-poms one at a time, and then refilling it. And that's a really good fine motor activity, as well as stringing beads. And if your student doesn't have beads at home, there's a picture there of using dried spaghetti, and stringing Cheerios on top of that. So I thought that's something that those families might have at home, and a fun one to do. And then for tactile discrimination, this is one that might be something that needs to be sent home, or giving your families the links. But there are quite a few different raised line coloring books out there. I know Exceptional Teaching sells a couple of them. And crayons, I definitely recommend with students using scented crayons. Markers are brighter, however, it's not as great for strengthening, because a marker just slides over the table, whereas a crayon you have to start using a little bit more pressure. And then tracking activities, and those, as I'm sure most of you know, you can make at home and send, or they come, that's pretty much Mangled. Unit 1 is all sorts of tracking activities. So we'll go on to the next slide. And then I was thinking of ways we can have our students practice their Braille reading and writing, but also connecting with other students, because just like we feel isolated at times during this shelter in place, our students are feeling very isolated. So I was thinking about pen pals and possible sources for finding pen pals. So Braille and Teach, for those of us in California, is a great resource to post, obviously not posting students' personal information, but it might be a great way to connect our students together. The National Federation of the Blind has something called Braille Slate Pals program. And it's not just slate and stylus, but you can sign up and they will connect your students with a Braille pen pal. So that really would help with reading and writing. And again, if you have a great idea for this in the chat, if you know of another source, please let us know. And Eureka, if someone does have a source for that that I'm not saying, maybe let me know as you're looking through the chat. But I will go on to the next slide. So book clubs. This was a really fun one to start looking for. I knew about 70% of them, but I found a couple more. So the book clubs that I'm highlighting here are free books that your students, Braille reading students, are eligible for. You sign up and you'll get 1, 2, 3, 4 books a year from a variety of these different clubs. So I'm just going to run through some of these clubs for you. Let me get to my notes here. Okay, so National Braille Press has 4 different programs. The first is the Children's Braille Book Club, and by signing up, these ones are not free. It is a twin vision book. It's like a book of the month club. You pay for, if you're going to do 6 books a year or 12 books a year. But the great thing about it is it costs pretty much the same as a regular print book would cost. They're highly subsidized and they're really beautiful books and popular children's books. Great Expectations is another club where each book is chosen for its unique theme, and then it's supplemented with picture descriptions, free online activities to further explore the concepts. So it's geared for your younger readers. And again, this is also through National Braille Press. There is the Read Books program, which is, these books can be in English or Spanish, and it's for students birth to 7 years old. And the Bumpy Basics is those board books that I know I bought my children when they were little, the kind of indestructible board books. They have the Braille already put on them. They have those available as well. And then Seedlings offers their 2020 Book Angel program. So this is 3 free books per year by signing up, which is really great. And the other neat thing that I did not know about this is the TV, they call it the TVIP program for 2020, where teachers can sign up and get 4 free 1-volume Braille books per year. So even if you're not building your own library, it's a great way to be able to give more books to our students. Then there's the Braille Books program from the American Action Fund. And somehow my notes got lost on that one, but it's another, oh, I have it, it's 1 free book every month by signing up. And I actually have 2 slides worth of these free books. So the next one is the Braille Institute Special Collection. By signing up, your students can get 4 books per year, and they get to choose those books from the catalog. And then there's the Braille Tales program, and this is sponsored by APH and Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. So this is for students birth to 5. They're print Braille books, and you can get 6 a year. Then there is, and I know I'm going fast, I do apologize, but just remember we will post all of these links and the PowerPoint later this week. So there's the Braille Reading Pals Club, which is sponsored by NFB, and it is birth to 8, and students get 1 book per year. They receive birthday cards, they get activity sheets, they get signed up for a newsletter. So that's kind of a fun one for students. And then the last one, this group has been around forever. It's the Oakmont Visual Aids Workshop, and they make free handmade Braille and Tactile books. And I know I used to have a big box of these and I would give them to students. So they're great. Some are better than others, but the kids really like them. They're definitely for your pre-Braille beginning learners. So I'm hoping that these resources really help you out. And sometimes it's just, oh yeah, I remember that group. reminder of what can be helpful. So Vanessa is going to go ahead and finish off.
I think we should do a poll. Eureka, can you post the next question? So what resources do you use to get books and Braille materials to students? So go ahead and take a couple minutes or maybe a couple seconds to answer that question.
It's not letting you choose more than one.
Oh, yeah. Just try to select the one that you most use.
Okay, so I'm gonna end the poll. I see a lot of still coming in, maybe 5 more seconds. Okay, so I see a lot of embossing and emailing at 33%, and then Bookshare at 32%. At 20%, we have other, and then 11% CSMT/APH, 3% emailing.brf files, and 1% Learning Ally. But I'm sorry we couldn't capture everything you're using. I'm sure many of you are using a variety of platforms. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit about some ways to get books to students electronically. I'm sure that many of you are aware of these platforms, which can be used to get books to students, but it's nice just to be reminded. So some of these platforms include Learning Ally, Bookshare, Bard, Overdrive, which is a library application. So if a student has a library card, they can create an account on this website or app, and they can get electronic books from the library, audiobooks from the library, and other media like movies and TV shows, music, and things like that. So that's a really cool app if you haven't used it before. And then I know that it's not Braille, but Audible is providing free audiobooks to kids during shelter in place. So I know lots of us are trying to make do with what we have, and we might not have our Braille software at home on our computers, and maybe you brought your embosser home. Maybe you're successful at creating Braille documents and sending them to your students electronically. So we're going to talk about a few free ways to create Braille documents. PerkyDuck is a free Braille software developed by Duxbury, and it's available for Windows and Mac. It's pretty limited in what you can do with it, but if you can do a 6-key entry to create Braille files, it can save as a .dxb file or a BRF, which you can then either emboss or send to your student. And I've linked where to download it and a tutorial, which we'll share with you later. Braille Blaster was developed by APH, and it's a free Braille transcription software with a lot more things than PerkyDuck has. It's available on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and you can create and edit in print as the program transcribes in Braille. You can also use it to create math for your student. You can open several different file types, like a text file, XML file, NIMAS files, and then you can save them as a .brf for your student. So I learned this recently, but some embossers have built-in transcription software. I only found a couple that do this. The Juliet 120 and the Romeo 60 both do. That's called Direct Braille. And then the Index V4 and V5 embossers also do direct Braille. Unfortunately, I know many of us have U+ embossers for smarter balance testing, and those do require a Braille translation software separately. But for the embossers that do have direct Braille, to use it, your embosser has to be set up on the same Wi-Fi or network as your computer, and then you get the IP address of your embosser, put it into your web browser, and it takes you to this landing page where you can communicate directly with the embosser. There you can upload documents such as .brfs, Word documents, accessible PDFs, and .txt files, and they'll be sent to the embosser, transcribed, and embossed. Of course, you can't really do much about the formatting, but it's a quick and dirty way to get Braille quickly. So if you do have one of these embossers, I would refer to their manuals under Direct Braille for instructions on this process. So some of us may still be trying to create tactile graphics for students, and here are a few places to look if you want to create or find graphics. However, you'll still need to emboss them. APH Tactile Graphics Image Library has access to several pre-made graphics that are ready to emboss. Desmos is an online calculator, also an app where you can create graphs. And when you use the web version, you can actually export those and emboss them on a Juliet or a Tiger embosser. Touch-Mapper is a website you can go to and then plug in an address, and it pulls from the Google Maps data to create a file that can be embossed. So it's a really quick, easy way to get a map of your neighborhood or your student's neighborhood. And then TSBVI has just an extensive list of places that you can find tactile graphics and various resources. So I linked them here, and that'll be available to you after. But I did want to talk a little bit about QuickTac by Duxbury. This one, like PerkyDuck, is also free. And it was in this software, you can draw your own graphics, you can import a line drawing and clean it up, you can create Braille labels. And I think it functions a lot like the Paint app on Windows. So it's really, really easy to use, pretty intuitive. You can create something there, or like I said, import a line drawing from a Google search and then dress it up. When I called Duxbury, they said that technically you could emboss directly from QuickTac, but in practice it doesn't work that often. They recommended that you download the free version of Duxbury, and this version, I don't recommend it for creating Braille files. There's a lot of limitations on it. But it should work if you're just printing one page and you're inserting the image that you create in QuickTac. So you would create the graphic in QuickTac, save it as a .sig file, close QuickTac, open your free Duxbury, insert the file, and then emboss. I thought that was a pretty cool solution. So let's do our last poll. I want to know, how are you getting new Braille to your students?
And Stephanie or Vanessa, maybe you can explain a little bit by what you mean by refreshable Braille displays. So you're talking about just like in electronic format with using a screen reader or NVDA or something like that?
Yes. All right, how about 5 more seconds? Okay, so I'm going to share the results. It looks like a lot of you guys are mailing Braille materials, and that would make sense because you're spending so much time creating them. So There you go. 53% of everyone is mailing Braille materials. And then second, we have other, 31%. I'm realizing here we don't have email. So maybe that's part of other. 14% say students have what they started shelter in place with, and 3% say refreshable Braille displays. But I hope you got some ideas about how to get students more Braille in a variety of ways that hopefully cut down a little bit on the time that you take to prep.
And quite a few people, 5 or 6, have said they're doing porch drop-offs and pickups.
Porch drop-offs. That's so sweet. That just, you guys work so hard. Well, I wanted to share some resources for parents because I know we're relying on parents a lot more now than ever. So some resources for parents to get involved and learn a little bit of Braille are displayed on this slide. And these classes include Just Enough to Know Better, which is a self-paced workbook. There's Paths to Literacy, Dots for Families curriculum, which are self-paced lessons on their website. There's the BRL, Braille Through Remote Learning. That's also just plug and play lessons on a website. Hadley School for the Blind courses, and soon we will be having Braille webinars with Stephanie at CSB. So that's something to look out for. And then a lot of the ideas that we got for this presentation, Stephanie is a huge fan of Pinterest, definitely an endless source of inspiration for a variety of things, but even for Braille instruction, there's a lot of very cute things on there. Paths to Literacy is something I probably go to that website at least 4 times a week, and they have a lot of resources there already for you. And then there's just so many resources available right now that we have created a resource list. So it's the California School for the Blind resource list. And there you'll find a variety of resources organized by subject for teachers of the visually impaired, for parents, for the kids that you're teaching. So Stephanie did a really great job condensing all of those resources, and maybe you can find some inspiration there as well. But
and just so you know that the resource list on the CSB website, if you go to the COVID-19 page, and you'll see there's a separate resource list for parents and one for teachers, and we update those about once or twice a week. So keep your eye on those.
Should I just show how to find that?
Sure.
Quick?
Yep.
So if you go to the CSB website, it's going to be under resources, and the first link there is COVID-19 updates. It will take you to the various resource lists, but we are referring specifically to the parent resources and the teacher resources. And if you have any questions, those are our emails. Feel free to email us. We will, of course, make this presentation available to you. It will be posted on our CSB YouTube, and I'll just go ahead and pull those links and send them directly to your emails at the end of this presentation. But I think it's time to open it up for some questions, so I'm going to stop sharing my slides.
And just a reminder, feel free to ask questions, but also if you have something that we didn't talk about, a resource, an idea, we do want this to be collaborative. We have such talented teachers out there, and we want to hear from you guys about what's working. What are you doing that could help your fellow colleagues?
I see Dorit raising her hand. Go ahead, Dorit.
Yeah, hi. I am teaching mostly low vision students, and 2 of them have learning Braille kind of as a backup, and I'm having a hard time juggling like supporting them academically while they're doing their distance learning and trying to get in my time with teaching them Braille from a distance. And I was wondering if anyone had any suggestions on what I should be focusing on, and or like how to get them to do Braille basically on their own from a distance for low vis kids.
So are you working with a specific curriculum at this point for Braille instruction, or is it all teacher made?
Before we left in a hurry with no opportunity to take anything from our office, we were doing patterns, and I did a lot of self-made stuff as well. And again, they're low vision, so they do use their vision for their academics on the most part with their technology. But in their IEP, it says they're supposed to be getting so much amount of Braille every week, and I haven't been able to. They're doing so much academics that I haven't been able to like figure out how to fit it in or find activities that work for them independently.
And what level are they at?
Super basic, just learning the code, like the basic stuff.
So it sounds like, I mean, tracking activities. I don't know if they know the alphabet. You know, you can find, I would say maybe even just games. So card games, or if they can play with a sibling or a parent, and maybe even brailing a sentence to you that you then answer. They could braille it to you and take a picture of it, send it to you, and you braille them something back. It will take time to get back to them. I'm just throwing out ideas. Does anyone else have some ideas?
Stephanie, what do you think about objective ed for that situation?
It actually could be a really good option. Dorit, you might take an hour to just watch the Objective Ed webinar. And Objective Ed is free right now for teachers, so it's actually a really good time to give it a try. And you do need access to an embosser. So not sure if you have access to that. Once you were to emboss the sheets, you would need the embosser, and your student needs an iPad. Depends if you have that technology.
Well, I like the idea about the games, so I might look into
Okay.
My biggest problem is a lot of games come with large print, and then they won't use the Braille. So I have to make my own like Braille cards and maybe get them to them. But thank you for answering my question. I'll let other people ask.
And it looks like some people are also giving you some thoughts on the chat, so take a look there.
Will do. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Stephanie, there's a question from Wendy Harris. Any resources for older students with basic English skills?
Basic English skills or basic Braille skills?
It says basic English skills. Wendy, you can unmute yourself if you want to expand further on your question.
Hi, this is Wendy, and all of my students are learning English as a second or third language. So I've always had to use teacher-made material. So it's, my middle school and high school kids are reading, some of them are reading, mid-elementary, some of them are reading kindergarten level English. And so a lot of they might know all the contractions, but they can't access the material that might be right at their level. So I always have to make all my own materials, which is time consuming.
For sure. So the Mango materials, Unit 3, UEB, I don't know if you have checked that out. It is written for beginning Braille readers, meaning the content is more of your beginning reader. So it is very controlled for contractions. It could work for your English as a second language kids. I think you just have to be honest with them and say there's not, it is written, it's going to be below their age level. However, the reading level might be a better match for them. And it's not quite as elementary or grade driven as patterns. So that's one possibility of something, so you're not having to create everything on your own.
sometimes I do have them create things for each other. that I
Yeah,
like.
that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Eureka, are there some other
Yeah.
questions? Okay.
I'm looking in the questions from the form, and I think we haven't really touched on this topic so much in this session, but it's under the motivation. So ways to motivate students to practice their Braille exercises besides Braille games and labeling. Any other ideas?
Vanessa, you want to chime in? No, okay.
That's a tough one. I mean, if you take away Braille games, it is really hard. But I do like the idea of pen pals, or, you know, it depends on how old your student is. But I find a lot more reluctance teaching Braille to older kids, but they're very socially motivated. So pen pals might be a good option for that type of student. I would love to hear more. If you've had success motivating kids that without games, I would love to hear maybe creating comic books, or, you know, something creative along their interest.
While you're all thinking, one thought I have is I think it's really important to have materials that are of a high interest to students. So sometimes it's just finding out, you know, is your student really interested in cars? And then going online to a website that has articles written for kids, and there's a lot, you just have to Google that, they're out there. Find a high interest, low reading level about cars, and you can dump it into your, well, if you have a Braille translator, try one of the free translators. Hopefully you have access to an embosser, but creating materials that are of really high interest for students does make a big difference for them.
I just read the sweetest thing in the comments that I really want to share. Somebody said, one of my students is motivated to read a Braille menu because during the last week of school, I'm sending him a pizza off the menu, and we're going to have a virtual pizza party. That's awesome.
That's Diane Adams, right? Yeah.
That's great. I've had students even just baking, because recipes are really easy because it's just one line, a couple of words on a line. So sending your students simple recipes, granola, fruit smoothies, finding out what they like to eat is a nice way. Maybe have them send you their favorite recipe if they are trying to, you know, work on their brailing, their writing. That's an idea.
There's a lot of great ideas in the chat as well. Having them create a story based off a game or show and have the student add themselves to that game or show and write the story. Some stories on Tar Heel Reader, which I'm not sure, I haven't accessed those. I don't know what those are.
I know that's out of North Carolina, and I only know that because my brother lives there.
Jessica says the Braille Tutor app on the iPad gives you 6 key entry on the iPad. And it self voices, and there are 91 lessons in UEB. So that's a fun way. Make it. There's quite a few ideas in the chat.
You know, and I even, you know, my own kids are bored at home, and just even having a family reading time, if you can encourage families, that Braille doesn't have to stand alone, but if you can have a sibling sit and read while your student is sitting and read, and knowing that it's reading, so it can be a family activity, and rather than always having to be an instructional activity, and that might work for some.
Yeah, I want to get, there's 2 hands raised, if that's okay with you, Vanessa. Miriam Dixon, I'm going to go ahead and lower your hand and go ahead and unmute yourself.
This is Miriam. I put it in the chat about I Am Able by Diane Wormsley. I really love that method of teaching. You have to make the materials yourself, but it's very simple to make. But the reason I strongly suggested it's good for English as a second language.
What was the name again?
It's capital I hyphen, capital M hyphen, and then ABLE by Diane Wormsley.
I've heard of that before.
Yeah, it's a fantastic program, and there's you can purchase the book that she wrote all about it that instructs you how to instruct students using the I Am Able program. It's really fantastic, and I am sure there's YouTubes or webinars out there to help you out get started on that.
Yeah, okay, thank you for sharing that. Norma Escobar, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, I just wanted to throw this out there. I know there's a lot of materials for parents, and I found that when I kind of sent some to my parents, they get a little overwhelmed at trying to read a lot of what is going on. What is it that we look at, you know, like posture and finger placement and all sorts of things to help out on there. And I've made it's kind of time consuming, but I've made these little, I've had to make my own YouTube channel, and I've made little short, like 2-minute videos where it's just loading the brailler, you know, with paper, how to place your fingers on a braille line and track, how to, you know, how to sit properly when at the brailler, you know, just really quick little snippets that's, you know, visual for the parents, because that's how they learn a lot of their stuff. And they look out for it when their kids are practicing during the off times. And I've just done, you know, things like also using the signature guide properly, just writing the name and, you know, finger placement for that. And I send the links to the parents. I go, hey, you know, you were asking me about the abacus. Well, here you go. You can follow along this way and so forth. So that's what I've done, and to help out with the parents. And that's if anybody else, you know, is able to do like quick little snippet videos and send them directly to the families, and that could also help too.
Norma, would you be willing to share that YouTube channel with us? Because that's the kind of things that we're putting on the resource list, and I could put it on our CSB resource list for others to access.
Sure. Sorry, I hate the sound of my own voice, and I always think I'm goofy on it. But yeah, sure. I only have 3 videos up so far. I'm actually working on 2 more to hopefully get up before the end of the week. I just asked my parents, hey, you know, what's going on today at home? Do you feel like we're stuck somewhere? And, you know, like, oh, I know you sent me a link about, you know, the abacus, but I still don't understand it. And it was more of a reading, you know, so it's easier to just, if the parents see what's going on and hear what's going on, then they can follow along.
That's a great idea.
So yeah, they're really small, to the point, not too fluffed up, you know, type of YouTube videos, and to help out the parents. Sure. I just let me know where you want me to send you the link.
Yeah, and I would encourage anybody else who's doing similar things. I think a lot of us are creating like little videos or guides. I know, Annalisa, you said you created a Padlet that can be shared with with parents. And so if you email that to us, me, Stephanie, or Vanessa, we can include it on the resource list. And it's really, you know, a huge list of resources for everybody to pull from, and a collaborative effort. Stephanie, is it okay with you if I take 2 of the questions from the Braille Tech questions from the Google form?
Yep.
Somebody asked, is it worth getting the new Mantis 40 by APH versus the Focus 40? Suggestions for starting a first grade student with a Focus 40 and a laptop or iPad. So my suggestion, I think that the Mantis is quite interesting because it gives you the Braille output with a QWERTY keyboard. And here at CSB, you know, we're trying to push typing. In fact, in order to push typing, we discourage students to do 6-key input on the Braille display if they're using a laptop. So I I mean, I can't advise one way or another, but those are the advantages and disadvantages of either. And this is not, especially for a student who's just starting, you know, on a computer. Also, there was a question about, are the files generated by free Braille transcription apps compatible with Duxbury Braille Translator?
Yeah, they are. So you would save them as a .brl file, and then you could open them in Duxbury and edit them.
Yeah, and for the TVIs or teachers who don't have Duxbury on their home computer, another option, a free option would be Braille Blaster, and you can create BRL files from there. Okay, Diana Carlson, you have your hand raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, it's this is Davina.
Davina.
And yeah, I actually also recommended the I Do Like It Braille reading program by Tricia Defice. I think that's how you pronounce her name. And it's now free, and it's actually pretty easy to follow and read if that other teacher is looking for a reading program for her students. I actually use it for adults myself, and it's all double line spacing. It has raised line for the beginning and ending up each line, and it's very easy to read. So if she's if she's looking for a pre-program, it's now pre-download. And also an activity for kids that I learned from one conference long time ago. I'm not sure if a lot of teachers are already aware of this. It's more for getting up your students and basically using your body to create your Braille letters or Braille contraction at that matter. Like your dot one is basically raising up your wrist on your left hand up in the sky, and then your dot four is raising up your fist, I should say, up on the sky. So that's your letter C. And then your dot two and your dot five is basically swaying your left hip and right hip, and then thumping your right foot for your left foot for your dot three and your right foot for your dot six. So if you want to create your cue, you basically have to move all those two hands, your hips and your dot, your left foot. So if they want to create, have their student do some kind of, exercise activity using, creating their Braille contractions or alphabet, that's a good exercise to do for them too. But, I just want to share that.
Linda says that's called body Braille. That's a really fun, cute activity.
Right.
So there was a question, I think we covered it, Vanessa did actually in her slides, but I thought I'd just reiterate it. The question was, what can I do to help parents / nannies who don't know Braille, quote, teach pre-Braille and early Braille? Do we know of any good videos, fine motor activities, etc.? So we did, one of my favorites, I think, for parents who want to start learning Braille is Just Enough to Know Better. I do think it's a really great program. There's also, like I said, there's, well, coming soon, I don't know when it's going to be ready. I'm actually doing a Learning Braille webinar series that will be on the CSB website. Hoping to have it out in about a month or so, but it will be about 5 sessions for just beginning learning UEB. Definitely designed for teaching assistants, parents, not for kids. Definitely not a way to teach Braille to your students, but more for those of us who are helping students. And then as far as pre-Braille activities, I really encourage you to look at Paths to Literacy, fabulous ideas on there, all sorts of ideas. And again, if you know something very specific, like you want to work on fine motor or you want to work on strengthening, that's a nice way to just, put something into Pinterest and find some really great, quick and easy ideas there. I think one of the nice things about Pinterest is that it goes outside of our field, which is nice because you might have an OT recommend something or a PT. Sometimes when we stay just within our field, you might hear the same suggestions over and over, and it's sometimes when you go outside and you hear other people's suggestions as
well. How about this question? How to do Braille with students who don't have any Braille technology at home and are currently primary visual readers?
We talked a little bit, silence. We talked, it's a hard one. It's really hard, and you are all working super hard. We talked a little bit about that earlier. Does anybody have other ideas? That we didn't bring up. Anybody brain been working on that one?
Is it possible to send maybe a swing cell to that student? Because we play the swing cell game. We have, I don't know, I just kind of made it up, but basically we take turns, teacher, parent, student, and then I hand it to them, and it doesn't have to be upside or right side up, but they know to orient the top of the cell because of the fuzzy part of the Velcro, and then they have to decide what it is, a contraction letter or whatever that might be. You could do that with Braille Caravan also. It's kind of just a fun thing. It's a guessing game basically, and that keeps me on my toes too, but it would help a parent to also learn.
Yeah, and if you are a fan of the swing cell, egg carton, cut an egg carton in half and use pom-poms or balls in it. That works well, same idea as the swing cell. I think doing that, and then if your student has a Braille writer, going from the swing cell and then to the Braille writer and practicing a line of those, writing as many words, even if it's just made up spelling. We talk about that as beginning readers, coming up with words that begin with or end with, those kinds of activities.
Just to interject, as a funny story, the mochi ice cream that you buy in the store comes in a little 6-pack, and it's really convenient. It's small, but you can put anything you want as far as the pegs. Yeah, it's kind of fun. We collect a lot of those.
I mean, I've seen a lot of really creative things on paths to literacy that are low tech. Like somebody put peanut butter on saltines and then put raisins as the Braille letters. So then they would have a snack and eat Braille at the same time. So I would encourage you to look there as well.
True consumable Braille.
Yeah.
It increases motivation.
For sure.
And make them chocolate chips.
Yeah, so it's 4:00, guys. Do you want to answer like one last question if anybody has a burning question? Otherwise, all the questions that were asked in the Google form, I think we're going to try to answer each one of those, and that will be posted.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And the last Tuesday tea is next week, although we do have plans to resume in the fall. Depending on where we are all teaching will depend on kind of how we organize it, but keep an eye out we do want to continue this. We think it's a great way for us all to collaborate, and we're a community of teachers, and so we can all help each other. So next week, let's see, Adrian, Amanda, and
Eureka. We have a special guest too. Yeah. We're bringing in an old ringer. We're bringing Jerry Coons to Tuesday Tea next week, everybody. So anybody who needs a Jerry fix in the last decade that you've missed him, show up next week. I'm assuming we're going to go over 100 next week too now, Eureka. Jerry's going to do that by himself.
I need to upgrade my Zoom.
100, make it bigger than 100 if you can.
Jerry will be here. So we'll take general questions. We'll talk about tech. We can talk about more than tech, but tech will be the topic, pointed topic. And then, like Stephanie said, we're looking forward to making this happen next year too.
All right,
Thank you,
thank you. Bye.